So as I've been doing the last week or so, I've been wanting to go through and talk about more teams as we get down to the start of the NBA season. It's under a month away now, just over a week until the first preseason games begin. So I want to get through as many teams as I can in this space and just talk about what my thoughts are. So I've gone through a couple teams. I've got through the Lakers, and I also did a overview of the Eastern Conference, talking about how stacked the Eastern Conference is and how many teams are going to be competing for a spot in the Eastern Conference playoffs this year. There's 11, 12 teams that all consider themselves locks to get into the playoffs, and discuss what I thought about that. It's a similar story over in the Western Conference. Not quite as many teams. It's more top heavy than the East is, but there's still 10 teams that I think, well, probably actually 11 teams that are going heavy at the playoffs, and 10 teams that I would consider in years gone by locks to make the playoffs. Suns, Grizzlies, Warriors, Mavericks, Jazz, Nuggets, Timberwolves. I think those 7 are pretty settled, in my opinion. Say what you want about the Timberwolves. They've traded for Gobert. They're going to be good. Then you have the Pelicans, the Lakers, and the Blazers. 8, 9, 10. And then you also have the Kings at 11, who are going to be competing, but I think are that level below. And one of the things with 10 don't fit into 8. 2 of those teams have to miss the playoffs. And someone tweeted that out today. It was Dr. Guru. I saw tweeted that out today, and he tweeted out those 10 teams, not including the Kings, and he said 2 of these teams are missing the playoffs. And reading through the comments, it was pretty unanimous that it's the Lakers and the Blazers. And my thoughts on the Lakers, I talked about in my past video. I can see why you think that. Davis's health, LeBron's health, Russell Westbrook, there is enough reasons there. But I was interested that it was just so unanimous that the Blazers were the other team to miss out. There was a couple of people who even said they'd put the Kings above the Blazers this year. And I do understand in the fact that if I had to rate them, it is a really tough call, but Pelicans are probably ranked 10. Sorry, our Blazers are probably ranked 10 with the Pelicans for me. Even though I know the Pelicans are going to be getting back better with Zion, I have my doubts about Zion. I will be making a video on that coming soon. But with Portland, it was interesting how unanimous people were that they're going to be the one of the 2 teams to miss the playoffs this year. So I can understand the Lakers. That's probably more predicting health, and also the fact that they just were bad last year. But Portland, it doesn't feel like it's a health one. It's just people are saying this roster isn't good enough. And if you look at it quickly, I can understand. They traded CJ McCollum last year. Dame was injured last year. I can understand why you don't think they're the best. But the truth is, I still think there's something of a decent roster there. You've got Damian Lillard, who we know what he is when healthy. When healthy, he's a top 10 player in the NBA. He's a guy that can lead his team to the Western Conference Finals. He's done it before. Bit of a interesting run to get there, but still, I think they were a good team that year. One of the 3 best teams in the Western Conference, in my opinion. And he can still do that, I think, at his best. We've seen how dominant Damian Lillard can be at his best. Last year, he was not at his best. It was an abdomen injury. I believe he was carrying over from the Olympics the off-season before. And because of that, he only played 29 games. In that 29 games, he was actually better than I remembered. I remembered him just being terrible. But 40% from the field, 32% from 3, 87% from the line. That helps. About 7.5 assists. That's about what he's been averaging the last few years. 4 rebounds. Those are stats on a bit of an empty team. And when you actually look at the true shooting percentage, I was surprised it's still at 55%, which is a big drop off for him, but that's still decent for a load heavy guard in the NBA, particularly one that takes a lot of threes. That's not too bad. I think 58% is league average, so it's 3% below league average, and as a guard, that's pretty decent still. But the 2 years before that, 62% true shooting. He's shooting, 39% from 3, 40% from 3, 46% from the field, 45% from the field, 30 points per game, 29 points per game, 8 assists per game, 7.5 assists per game. He is a really good player, Damian Lillard. There's no doubting that. And I think it's foolish of us to discount this team at this point, okay? I understand the concerns, and I understand the fact that 2 teams have to miss the playoffs. It's not saying that they're not a playoff caliber team. It's saying that they're just not as good as these other playoff caliber teams. And in today's season, there is more than 8 playoff caliber teams in the Western Conference. I understand that argument, and I've been making that argument over in the Eastern Conference for teams like the Wizards to go rebuild. And there is an argument for the Blazers to go rebuild here. Do you try and capitalize on Lillard's value? But they've just given him that extension. One of the things you have to realize is Portland is a really small market, so to get a guy like Damian Lillard, you're not getting it any other way. Someone like Washington, New York, they're bigger markets than Portland is. And Lillard has been their guy for a long time. There's a lot of belief in him. They just gave him that extension. I don't think he's going anywhere, okay? If you're giving him that money, I don't think you're trading him at this point. So, and if you have Lillard, you want to be competing. And because he is, I think he's 31 years old, if I'm not mistaken. I can see it here quickly. I think he's 32 years old. He turned 32 a couple months ago. Okay, so he's getting up there. You've probably got 2 more years of prime Damian Lillard, I'd imagine. So you want to be competing these next 2 years. And it seems weird that they trade CJ McCollum, but they needed to retool that roster. They'd run that roster as far as they could. They'd run their luck as much as they could, and they got swept in the Western Conference Finals in 2019 by Golden State. It clearly wasn't a team that could get a title. It did really well for what it could do. Outperformed what it should have, but still couldn't win a title. But they put together a team that is far more defensive-centric, which I like, around Dame. Has more athleticism, more length around Dame, which I like. And to give a bit of clarity what they've done over the offseason, you've got Lillard, you've got Anthony Simons, who had a really good end of last season. Getting his stats up now quickly. Yeah, 17 points per game last year. 40% from 3, 44% from the field. Those numbers were even better, I think, post All-Star game and stuff once Dame was gone, and he really was the guy. He got himself a $22 million a year contract, like $90 million, I think it is, over 4 years, something around that. They picked up Jeremy Grant, which I thought was a great trade for Portland. I really like Grant in this sort of scheme where he's not having to be a number one guy offensively. I think he's a bit overrated at times. Grant is like, he'll solve all our problems defensively. But overall, I think he's a good player. I like him. I like the length he provides. I do like the fact that he's a good defensive guy. And I think what we saw in Denver will be close to what we're seeing of him here. And the fact that when he doesn't have to have that offensive load, defensively, he can more be locked in on, like, I'm just going to defend the other team's best wing, best forward. That's what they really needed, is they needed that guy who could defend the other team's best wing, best forward. Wasn't Covington, it just didn't work. He's not that guy. He needs to be a rim protector. He needs to be an off-ball guy. So they picked up him. They still got Josh Hart from, I think that was from the trade. Yeah, that was from the CJ McCollum trade. I thought that was a great pickup for them. Last year, 20 points per game when he was playing for Portland. Really underrated second half of the season. Only 13 games, obviously, with Portland, but 37% from 3, 20 points per game, 4.5 assists. But even last year, the whole season, 15 points per game, 50% from the field, 34% from 3, 4 assists per game, 7 rebounds. Good defender, but he's an underrated playmaker. I think Hart is a really underrated pickup for this team. He'll be really good. He can defend the 2 or the 3, can defend guards, which they will need guys that can do that with Lillard and Simons out there. They're not going to want to be picking up top guards. Got Gary Payton, another great pickup. They got defense, they got a bit more length, they got shooting around, not shooting, but like decent shooting, just getting his percentages up from last year. Yeah, it was 35% from 3 last year on 1.5 attempts per night, but only in 17 minutes. So he's not a great shooter, but he's not going to be a bad 3-point shooter, you know. He can survive out there with Dame. Like, that's the thing with Dame. All you need is someone who can, like, survive. That's what you're looking for. They got Shaedon Sharpe in the draft. Don't really know how he's going to fit into things. Had the injury problems going into the draft. Some people consider him, like, a top 5 talent. Like, for them, it was, like, Banchero, Holmgren, Smith, Ivy, then Sharpe. I was a bit lower on him, but I didn't do heaps of scouting and stuff. That was just from the bits of tape I saw and the things I was looking at and things I heard. I wasn't as high, but it'd be interesting to see how he develops. I think it's a good position for him where he can sort of just do as much as he can this year. He's not needing to do anything more. If he didn't play a minute, this Portland team wouldn't really feel it. But if he can play 25 minutes a game and suddenly become a great scorer off the bench, that will really help Portland. But they don't need it. I think that'd be good for him. Got Justice Winslow, Andrew Nicholson, Keon Johnson, decent. Drew Eubanks, Greg Brown, Eric Bledsoe. So yeah, the roster does fall off after. Also Nazir Little. I don't know if I said Nazir Little. That was a good pick. He'll be good. He's going to be getting some playing time. He'll be in the top of the rotation. So yeah, it's not a great team, Portland. But the truth is, they have Damian Lillard, and I don't think you can discount him in the regular season. One of the things about Lillard, he is a regular season star, okay? He's even better come playoff time, but he's not a guy that's just going to cruise through the regular season, okay? He's not a LeBron. In that case, he's not going to be like Curry will be this year. Obviously, Curry has been amazing in regular seasons gone by, but at this point, Golden State, Curry, Thompson, Green, they just want to get to the playoffs right now. But he had a bad regular season last year, but before that, he averages like 36 minutes per game in the regular season for his entire career, okay? He led the league in minutes per game 3 years ago. Still played 36 minutes a game last year for the 30 games he played. And that was when Portland was still looking not that great. So, Dame Lillard's going to play. That's the thing you have to realize is, yes, he had the injury, but that's why they let him sit out the last 2/3 of the season, was to get that injury right, so he would be right to go for this season. They believe he's good to go. If they don't think that he was 100% to go, they're not trading picks for Grant and all this. They pick up Grant because they think he'll be playing with Damian Lillard. They're paying this money to Simons and stuff. They're doing these moves because they think they'll be having a fully healthy Damian Lillard, or at least they are confident in that. So they're confident in a healthy Lillard. That's like 37 minutes per night you're getting from Lillard at a top level, 30 points per game, top 10 player. That's what you have to sort of be ready to expect next year. Obviously, I know he may not be the same after the injury. There is that concern. I understand that argument of, who's to say he ever gets back to the same player? Well, he was doing it consistently enough that I'd like to think he can. I think his success wasn't reliant on, like, his athleticism too much. Like, he was an athletic point guard, but that wasn't where he wasn't driving to the rim. It was just being an incredible shooter and scorer off the dribble. So I don't think it will be as big of an issue if he's still a tiny bit unfit. Obviously, the abdomen, that's going to be in your shooting motion. Has it affected that? That will probably be the big question to see. Were those threes not dropping because he just wasn't right overall, or because, like, it's genuinely messing with his shot? That'll be the one question. But I think this roster I like the defense they brought in from the McCollum trade on, getting Hart, Peyton, Grant. I think they're three really good defenders. They've got Little still, they've got Sharp, and they've got Nurkic. So overall, around Lillard and Simons, because the thing about Simons is, I just think of Simons as like McCollum 2.0. It's like, he'll be playing a similar role to what McCollum did as that undersized two guard next to Lillard. So when I say a team around this Lillard, when I say what the roster is built around this Lillard team, it's basically the same sort of setup they had the last 5-6 years with McCollum. Okay, so when I'm talking about the defensive potential of this lineup, know that I understand it was different last year with McCollum, but Simons, I don't think he's providing that much more than McCollum was defensively. Similar build, similar height, maybe a bit of a better defender being younger, but yeah. It's not crazy difference. So, in terms of the best defense that the Portland front office has put around this two small guard lineup, I think this is the best they've done. Grant, Nurkic, Hart, Peyton, Sharp, Little, Winslow maybe, Keon Johnson maybe. They brought in Eric Bledsoe for like $1 million on the minimum. Like, I think he really plays, but like, they've got defense there now, and I think that's a good sign. Overall, I think there's enough good defenders there and enough guys that fit what Damian Lillard wants to do, because Lillard wants the ball in his hands on offense, and rightfully so. He's a great player, and he wants guys that can be defending on ball around him. Last year, the issue was that Portland were running these blitzer concepts and trying to use Covington and stuff, but that's not Covington's role. Like, Covington's better as like an off-ball guy. He's better help on like a team like Chicago or something. If he wasn't on the Clippers, obviously he's good at the Clippers as well. But like Chicago, where they've got like Lonzo and Caruso and Levine and these guys who are willing to go at it defensively, and then he can be this like backline helper in the lane and in the gaps and stuff. That's where he's at his best, not when he's having to defend on ball all 48 minutes or all 30 minutes he's on the court. So yeah, obviously I'm not saying Portland's going to be winning the title. I'm not saying they're winning the conference finals, but I don't think you should like write them off, because I understand that is it'll be reliant on Damian Lillard's health. But the thing you have to think about is, okay, this similar team of Lillard, small two guard, Simons, McCollum, Nurkic at the center, with I think lesser players in the forward spots. that's gone to the playoffs every year before the Dame got hurt. So obviously I think the West is deeper this year than it has been for a while, but the West has always been good. The Eastern Conference, it's built up a lot more than it used to be the last 5-10 years. The West has always been pretty deep. So I don't know how much you can say that, the rest of the West is so much better than it was. Like, maybe the bottom end of the West is better than it was the last few years. Yeah, like, you were able to get teams sneaking in there, like Minnesota snuck in, and the Pelicans snuck in last year. You've had teams like that sneaking into the playoffs, but who I don't think would be getting in this year. Like, this current Minnesota team, last year's Minnesota team wouldn't be making it if it wasn't for the Gobert trade and stuff. But I do still think this is a decent team. I think it's the best roster Dame's had around him, providing that Simons can continue what he did last year. Last year was really good, what we saw at the end, but providing that we see an extension of that. Another one, as I said, can we see like similar output from Hart in terms of that, like, playmaking and scoring? Because that would be amazing off the bench, or even starting at the 3 if they want to start in there next to Grant, Simons, all those guys. Because that is a bit of the other question, is who is that third wing? They brought in guards and Peyton and Sharp. They brought in the forward and Grant, who's the 3 there. Maybe, I think it has to be Hart, unless it's Nazir Little, or you think you could play Shaedon Sharp in a 3-guard lineup, but I think defensive worries there. And I don't think you're doing that this year anyways, with him being a rookie. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with Portland. I'm not saying they're making the playoffs, because I do agree. I think, in a nutshell, their roster is the worst out of those 10 teams that are competing, not including Sacramento, who I think is another tier below again. But once again, it's Damian Lillard, and that was the first time we've seen him like miss games. I just want to get at the stats quickly. Last year, only 29 games. Before that, 67, 66, that was the shortened season. 80, 73, 75, 75, 82, 82, 82. This guy plays, and he plays a lot of minutes for a lot of games outside of last year. That was an outlier. Obviously, coming off the injury, I'm expecting that to drop a little bit, but still, I don't think he's the sort of guy that's just going to sit games. I don't think he's the sort of guy that's going to play 30 minutes a game for the regular season. And if we're getting top Damian Lillard, if there's a chance we get that, I think Portland makes the playoffs next year. I'm not entirely sure, obviously, but I think Portland's health really is relying on that one guy, whereas there's other teams that I'd be more concerned about, like teams like the Clippers, who are relying on Kawhi and Paul George and stuff being healthy finally. I'm not saying the Clippers are falling out of the playoffs, because as long as one of those guys are healthy, they're making it. But you've even got teams like Denver, depending on what happens there. Can Murray stay healthy? Can Porter stay healthy? It's funny. All these teams are saying, will Dame be healthy? Will he not? But we're also just sort of pretending that we're guaranteeing that Zion Williamson will be. But we've seen far less guarantee that Zion will be healthy than Damian Lillard. And if Zion isn't healthy, I'm taking this current Portland team over this current New Orleans team without Zion. An Ingram-led team, as I've said, that's a good enough team to win a spot in the playoffs in years gone by. But I think this year, Portland beats them. I think the Lakers beat that team, possibly. Maybe that's just Lakers bias, if we're being honest. But, yeah, don't sleep on Portland. I think they could be... I'm not saying they're making it, but they're not as easy of a write-off as people are making them. It's like, yeah, Portland, we'll flick them out, easy. Figured out 8 teams in the Western Conference. I don't think it's that simple. I think they could shock a lot of people. I think, for me, it's more likely that I see Portland as like a 4 or a 5 seed than like the 11 seed, dropping below the Kings, okay? If that gives you any clarity. I think it's more likely that they way overachieve than they underachieve, in my opinion. I think they're good enough, and they've got enough talent there, and Dame is that sort of guy that he can carry a team for 82 straight games. He's done it before. And I like to bet on guys that I've seen do it, not the theory of what a new team could be. I like to bet on, I've seen this guy do this before. So, I like Damian Lillard. I like the Portland Trail Blazers this year. I think Grant's a great pickup. Hart's a great pickup. I think we could see a big year from Nazir Little. Yeah, I think Portland have a genuine chance to make the playoffs in the Western Conference. Alright, that's going to do it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. Comment below what your thoughts are about Portland. Where do you see them ending in the Western Conference? Don't forget to hit me up on those social media links down below. Subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification button. And hope to see you in the next one. Adios.